Hello again, friends. Welcome back. Glad you could join me. We're at the piano again in the sanctuary. And you'll recall the piece that I played last week was what we know as "Oh Danny Boy." Well, I had a lot of questions about that piece, so I thought I would answer a few before we got started. The name of the tune is Air from the county Londonderry. Londonderry is one word, D-E-R-R-Y. The tune, the air, is at least 250 years old, probably much older. It's just a folk song. It was first written down in the latter 18th century, but we really have no idea where it came from. It has been the tune for multiple hymns, wonderful hymns that used to be sung. However, we don't sing them anymore because in 1906, this guy wrote this song called "Oh Danny Boy," which became such a big pop hit that we can't sing the hymns anymore because all people know it as is "Oh Danny Boy." And the story behind that, the legend goes that the composer worked for a publishing company, and he hadn't really had a hit in a while. So his boss came to him and said, either write a hit or I'm going to sack you, basically. I'm going to fire you. So he came up with "Oh Danny Boy," and has been a hit ever since. Percy Grainger is the composer that arranged the piece last week. Grainger was an Australian composer, born 1880s or so. He moved to America when he was very young man, and basically lived here. So he was Australian, but he spent his career in America. And there's actually a neat link to High Point. He conducted at one time, he was a guest conductor in Winston-Salem with the Winston-Salem Orchestra, and also worked in Greensboro. He was staying in a hotel in Greensboro, so the legend goes. And the concierge in Winston-Salem that had booked him for the concert that evening called the hotel to say, "I'm coming to pick up Mr. Grainger." Well, the hotel said, "Oh, Mr. Grainger left 4 hours ago." What do you mean he left? Yeah, he left 4 hours ago. And they couldn't find him. This was in the 50s, 1950s, so there were no cell phones. So eventually Percy Grainger shows up in Winston-Salem 4 hours later because he had walked from Greensboro to Winston-Salem. And that's what he liked to do. He was a very eccentric dude, so he actually went to his tailor and said, "I want you to invent something that I can slide over my tuxedo with a drawstring and tie it on, made out of velour so it's really soft, and then I want like a sweatshirt with a zipper in it that I can just unzip and throw off and take the pants off, and there's my tux." He would wear that so that he could walk to his concerts and take this thing off and have his tux underneath. So basically, Percy Grainger invented sweatpants. I know, crazy story. But anyway, we're at the piano this week, and you remember from last week, this is officially called a piano forte, a soft loud, because it can go from loud to soft. There were several other inventions before this. Most people know what a harpsichord is. A harpsichord, if you had the string, it had a feather that would pluck the string. As you pushed the key down, it would actually pluck the string. The next real invention after that was called a forte piano. I know, again, not very creative. But that had, when you hit the key, a hammer would hit the string, but we didn't have what we have today, which is an action, which will multiply that force and make it hit really loud. There are also a couple of other inventions that we've come up with that I'll talk about in the piano. But first of all, we have these three pedals. People always ask about these three pedals. So the pedal on the right is called the damper pedal. And if I don't have that pedal down, here's what I get. If I push the pedal down, it magically holds whatever note I push down until I let that damper pedal up. The left side pedal is the soft pedal. That has an interesting mechanism too. I'll show it to you. The middle pedal is the one that's really kind of interesting. It is called a sostenuto. So if you push keys down and then you push the pedal down, it will hold those keys but nothing else. So as long as you're pushing the middle pedal down, whatever keys you were pushing down, it'll hold them until you let it go. So, before we move on, I want to show you that I said the word action. Here's another part that you're probably not going to see very often. If I can pull this out, and then I'll need to grab. If you look at the end down here, every key looks like that. Has one of these, it's called a repeater mechanism. That is the invention that allowed barely pushing it. You see how much the hammer moves when I push. It has a lot of force behind it. So there's one of our inventions. And this section right here has about 20,000 parts to it. So there are 88 keys, and you figure there's, how many? 220 pieces per key. So that's part of the invention. Let me show you some of the other neat stuff that. Now, if you look down at the hammer is the piece below the string. When I hit a key, it bounces that hammer up to hit the string. As you look, you'll see that there are 3 strings per note. And I said there's a soft pedal. Well, what the soft pedal does, it actually moves the whole keyboard to the right so that now it only hits 2 strings instead of 3 strings. Really cool invention. This piece of wood down here that has the Yamaha on it, this is the soundboard. This is like the back of the guitar that vibrates. Here's the main reason that we have the piano. This big thing right here, the harp. The harp is cast iron. And although we could make cast iron 2,000 years ago, there really weren't foundries around until the Industrial Revolution, and unless you had patrons that would pay lots and lots of money for a casting, you didn't get a harp. So until we got mass production, we didn't have what we call the piano. This harp carries all of the weight of all of those strings. Before the harp, it was just wood. And as you know, wood is not terrifically strong. Every one of these strings also is very, very heavy gauge. And until the Industrial Revolution, we had kind of dinky strings. And if you've ever played a harpsichord, you see they're kind of soft and not really very hard, not really tempered. So when you pull on them and you tune them, they pull out of tune real fast. These are tempered so that they will stay in tune. Here's the other invention. Once you get to the bass strings, you'll notice that these strings consist of a steel string in the middle. Then there's this string, which is copper. And you see that copper is wound around the steel. And then there's another string that is copper that is wound around that. So until we found the technique to actually wind metal and to wind wire around other wire, we didn't have the capabilities to do all of this stuff. So, the piano. And next week, we will go even more in depth. Until then, peace to you.